Women, for example, are only paid 70 cents on the dollar compared to men. A big problem. As we navigate through this issue, I'd like to introduce you to a youth activist who will explore this issue through her lens. Please welcome and give a big round of applause for Elliott.
So, feminism. You heard it a million times, but let's delve into what exactly it is. At its core, feminism is hating men and worshiping the Barbie movie. And this TED Talk will be all about teaching you how to weaponize your high heels and miniskirts to rid the earth of men once and for all. I'm just kidding. But I wonder if we took an honest poll, how many people in this room would recognize that stereotypes like this have invaded their idea of what feminism actually is. Because much like a Barbie, it's something that's been dressed up by people who seek to change its purpose. You put an electric guitar in Barbie's hands and suddenly she's a rock star. But if you put a false label on feminism, it suddenly turns into this malicious agenda, this inconvenience, this problem. But it's none of these things. Feminism is, by definition, the belief in and advocacy of the social, economic, and political equality of the sexes. It's not the problem. It's an umbrella term for steps taken towards a solution. And it's for everyone. Everyone in this room can benefit from feminism and be a feminist. But advocacy for equality is marred by ignorant people who don't want to listen. I'm sure many of you have been in circumstances where your logic has been passed off as a rational emotion when you're asserting something you believe in. And while it's true that anger is at the root of advocacy, perhaps the single most pivotal thing for it to exist, how do you channel that anger in a way that prevents it from being used against you, overpowers rational arguments, and allows you to be your best feminist? This TED Talk, An Angry Girl's Guide to Polite Feminism, will teach you an overall strategy to do this. So what makes me the angry girl you should listen to? I'm a social media officer and content creator for Nightingale Advocacy, a student-run nonprofit that focuses on driving youth towards progressive health policy. I create Instagram reels on anything from abortion rights to trans healthcare. I combine trending TikTok sounds with reliable data to create advocacy that reaches the audience of today, which, yes, is teenagers like me who are addicted to their phones. So here is one of my most impactful reels about medical gaslighting. For context, medical gaslighting is when a female patient's concern for her health is invalidated by medical professionals, often with the premise of hormones and anxiety. This particular reel I made garnered around 12K views, over 1,200 likes, and many interesting comments, which we'll look at right now. And I'll warn you, as we look at 4 of these, to brace yourself. Number 1, it's everyone, not just women. You're less likely to fix a problem if you marginalize it. Number 2, nice, another victim class. Number 3, y'all just be saying sometimes. And number 4, you just don't like the solutions the medical doctors give you, LOL. So this is the problem. These comments are very obviously sexist, and the people who wrote them are very obviously ignorant. But even more so than ignorance, what stands out to you? Irrationality. Just imagine trying to have a productive conversation with one of these people about a controversial topic. I doubt most of you can, which leads us back to the subject of dealing with people who don't use logic and don't want to listen to the reasoning behind your call to action. Because really, this is where the real feminism happens. not with a huge platform and a large audience space. It's the conversations you have with your friend about that sexist joke they made, or with your parents about how important it is that they support safe legal abortion, where you can ultimately be your best feminist. But I think we can all agree that this isn't exactly easy. It isn't exactly easy because even despite having despite being well prepared in providing logical points and being knowledgeable about your subject, you will always have to be you will always have to overcome the stubborn unreceptiveness of ignorant people. But advocacy is meant for these people who are ignorant. So it's important to find ways to advocate to these people. So so how do you do this in a way but advocacy is meant for these people. So you need to and you probably know this, but I can almost guarantee that you can up your feminism game in a way that is more effective and easy. And you can do this with one simple method. I learned what is probably the most counterintuitive yet effective method I use for argumentative advocacy the summer before I came to TAMS, when I enrolled in judo. I had no idea what judo was, other than that it was a martial art form. I walked into the first day of class expecting that learning how to defend myself would be throwing punches and kicks and an array of offensive techniques that would help me take my opponent down. What I got was the exact opposite. See, judo is all about taking your opponent's trajectory and using it against them. I learned that a punch to the face isn't blocked and followed up, but rather forced further in the direction that it was thrown, throwing the person who threw it off balance and easily loaded onto the back for a hip throw. In this situation, I served as a fulcrum, directing my opponent's offense into my victory. This made me realize that the most natural form of argumentative advocacy is also the least effective. We tend to refute a lot and make claims and refute again, which results in a tug-of-war strategy of small wins and losses that don't really get anywhere with an irrational opponent. And it allows them to maintain their logical ignorance while also promoting escalation, such as yelling and interrupting when they realize that they're losing the argument. So this is where the judo method really shines. It's all about leveraging your opponent's irrationality to completely debase their claims. And number one, it works really well to prove a point. And number two, it prevents any escalation from the get-go. No one's going to try and interrupt you if you're taking the conversation in the direction that they want it to go. So, in Socratic dialogue, which you may have heard in your English class, is where the ancient Greek philosopher Socrates and other ancient Greek intellectuals discuss a usually subjective topic, and in this, most of what Socrates says isn't statements or assertions, but rather questions. And he uses questions to dissect his opponent's argument to the point that it's revealed in the raw, allowing him to point out any logical faults and easily win the argument. So let's look at some modern day judo feminists that have perfected this method. Ariana Grande was being interviewed by two radio DJs in Los Angeles when they suddenly busted out a very sexist question. It went, if you had to choose between using your phone or makeup one last time, what would it be? With an opportunity to ask an extremely talented, critically acclaimed music artist anything, they immediately gravitated to a question that had nothing to do with her career and tried to reduce her success to two objects. But Ariana Grande took this punch and went with it, saying, is this men assuming that that's what girls would have to choose between? This short yet powerful statement immediately shut down the misogynistic question and showed that women aren't defined by the harmful stereotype they tried to put onto her of only caring about their phones and their makeup. And all she had to do was recognize their unfounded logic and lead it to the ground where it ultimately defeated itself. In a similar situation, Scarlett Johansson was in a cast interview for Marvel when, after her co-star Robert Downey Jr., who plays Iron Man, was questioned about his character's development in the films, the interviewer shamelessly switched the type of question as she turned to Johansson and asked her about the process of getting in shape to fit into Black Widow's very tight costume. This was a very misogynistic question that focused on Johansson's body rather than her career and attempted to reduce her empowered superhero character to a mere sex icon. But Scarlett Johansson leveraged and leaned into the illogicalness of her interviewer and turned to Robert Downey Jr. saying, how come you get the really existential, interesting questions and I get the rabbit food question? Her flawless technique was rooted in taking control of the rationality of her opponent and providing the fulcrum for it to follow her. Notice that in both of these situations, these feminists completely disregarded the option to respond to the sexism they received as if it had any merit, instead using their opponent's irrationality against them. In fact, misogyny is always designed to elicit an emotional response that will in turn be exploited by the misogynist. Never let them have this. And this leads into our next judo sensei. In the new Mean Girls movie released this year, Renee Rapp stars as Regina George. And because of it, she received a bombardment of body shaming on social media. Her response to this was incredible. She addressed the body shamers with, you're so obsessed. You are so clinically obsessed. And I get it. I know I look good. You don't have to talk about it. Not only did she turn the hate she received into her advantage, but she also immediately put the blame in the right spot. And what I mean by this is that the haters expected her to take their insults to heart, get hurt, and even maybe apologize for her body. But instead, she pointed out the real problem, that people were even commenting on her body to begin with. And in this way, she used judo feminism to show that it is extremely effective to call out the irrationality of your opponent and redirect it to shut down sexism. So in all of these examples, you can see how effective and easy of a tool judo feminism is for advocacy. Pairing it with logical points and founded reasoning in your calls to action will transform your impact as a feminist. So to wrap things up, no pun intended, I'd like to show you one more comment I received on my health policy reels. It says, you bring dishonor for not being a smart Asian. Now, believe it or not, but this is actually one of my favorite comments I have ever received. And judging from your shocked faces, you're probably wondering why. Well, it isn't always obvious when you've succeeded in advocacy for equality. People don't like being wrong, nonetheless admitting it. And many people will not ditch their irrationality once you call it out and invalidate the logical argument it was holding up. Just the fact that this person resorted to insulting me in a way that had nothing to do with my reel shows that they couldn't find a way to attack the data and reasoning behind it. So in this light, I take it as a victory. And you guys should also be looking out for the point at which ad hominem completely takes over. Just know that yes, you can and should walk away, and when you do, you've won. So, as a leaving comment, I'd like to encourage all of you to get angry. Get so angry about injustice. Feel that anger, and leverage that anger using the technique I detailed today. In the beginning of the Barbie movie, the narrator says, "Thanks to Barbie, all problems of feminism have been solved." Outside of Barbie world, this is far from the truth. There's still so much work to do. And I implore everyone in this room to choose to be a voice that speaks up for and facilitates the movement towards equality, one judo move at a time. Thank you.